Hello, everyone. My name is Sonia Romano from the Water Post EU, and I'm here today joined by Mr. Hermann Tertsch, member of the European Parliament and Vice President of the PFE Group. At a time of geopolitical fragmentation from the Middle East to Latin America to Ukraine, we'll discuss how Europe positions itself in a rapidly shifting global order. Welcome to you from Brussels.
Thank you.
Europe has watched with growing concern as the conflict involving the United States, Israel, and Iran has escalated dramatically. What started as a regional confrontation is now turning into a wider destabilization, with potential implication for the European security. In this context of a war that has spread across the Middle East, how should the European Union and the Parliament in particular respond right now?
Well, we'll see what happens. Things are developing very rapidly, so we will see what happens in the next days and the next weeks. But the European Union has been watching Iran and all the barbaric actions of Iran with complacency, I would say. And they haven't done almost anything till now when we have finally managed to declare that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard is a terrorist group. It's in the terrorist list, finally, after so many years of asking for that. I mean, in all the repression, because we have had now, only in January, we have had tens of thousands of Iranians murdered by this criminal regime. But that happened before. That happened before in the year 2019 and before that, and in 2021, if I don't remember. And nothing happened. I mean, we had our high representative was always very keen of going there to Tehran to limit damages, because we had to make businesses and looking and to appease the Iranians and to look for some way to appease the Americans as well, so that we could normalize relations. And they have had normal relations with a monstrous regime all this time. So what can the European Union now do? Well, some countries have decided to help America and Israel in what they are doing. What they are doing in this moment is to neutralize a regime which was increasingly becoming a danger for everybody, not only for their own people who are fed up and who feel invaded since half a century, which has took over the whole country. And you have now 80-90% of the people want to get rid of this regime. So what some countries are doing, Merz, for example, the Germans, and so on, and after some hesitations, the French as well, is to help. Others don't help, like Spanish example was Sanchez, but that's another problem. And this is a Spanish problem because Sanchez is a problem in the European Union. That's a very specific case.
Now, as you were mentioning, Spain, so let's go closer home, and Spain's foreign policy has increasingly intersected with European debates. Given this latest escalation and Spain's active role in EU foreign policy discussion, how do you see Spain positioning itself as a strategic actor within the European Union?
Well, it's not a question of Spain. It's a question we have a government, which is a government which is surrounded by corruption, by its own corruption, and which is in a very delicate position. Sanchez is a leader now that has more or less the same position as Maduro had some months ago. If you lose power, you go to jail. That's more or less the dilemma for Sanchez. So Sanchez wants to confront radically against America, against the United States. He wants to use the figure of Trump to promote himself as the anti-Trump. He did it with Israel, with the war in Gaza, continuously supporting, being very, very vocal in favor of Hamas, against every self-defense of the Jewish state. So now he goes against the figure of Trump in the hope that this helps him to promote himself, that because he's in a very weak political position in Spain, as I say. surrounded by accusations of corruption, of very, very serious corruption. There are many cases also in the United States running now in which the names of socialist figures, appear in very serious corruption and trafficking issues. So he's in a very delicate position, and he tries to make this kind of thing. But that's not a strategic kind of way of opening for Spain a path for having a new idea or something like that of how to do, how to solve this crisis. No, it's a very, very personal and very home-related position of the Prime Minister.
Staying with foreign policy but slightly changing the topic, long-standing disputes over EU engagement with regimes like Venezuela continue to shape EU's foreign actions. How do you see the EU's current approach toward the Maduro government? Is it striking the right balance between sanctions and dialogues, or should Europe change tactic?
Europe has been an accomplice of all the leftist government in Latin America. We follow very closely as Vox, as Spaniards, but also as Vox. We have a foundation very active in all Iberoamerica, as we call it. We have the Fora Madrid, which is a movement. It was signed, the Carta de Madrid is signed by Maria Corina Machado, by the new president of Chile, José Antonio Cast, by Milei, by Javier Milei, by many people, many very, very important people in Latin America. So the development in Latin America now is optimistic, but in spite of the European Union, not because they helped in any way. They have been helping systematically all the leftists, Petro, Lula, Kirchner, Boric, all the, as we said, the baddies, all the members of this narco-socialist kind of a forum, el Foro de Sao Paulo, Grupo de Puebla, which are the names which have inside these organizations, you have all these leftist movements, but you have also the drug cartels inside, and they cooperate. And the European Union has been misguided enough to help all these leftist groups in the last 10 years. And that is, in a great measure, it comes because the advice was always given by Spanish leftists. So the Socialist Party of Spain, who has such deep corrupted connections with the Venezuela Maduro regime, with the regime which Evo Morales before in Bolivia, the regime of Correa in Ecuador, and the regime of Moreno AMLO and in Morena in Mexico, so and others. They are all connected to the Socialist Party of the European, the Spanish Socialist Party, and the Spanish Socialist Party has been lobbying for this Foro de Sao Paulo and for this Grupo de Puebla, who, as I say, is a mixture of political organizations, terrorist organizations, and narco and traffickers, drug traffickers.
More broadly, how much do the EU-US relations shape the way Europe reacts to crises like this one?
Well, I mean, Europe is in a shock because they took the way, I mean, they have enormous difficulties to understand Trump, which is reasonable, it's understandable if you want, but they did nothing to understand and to help themselves. And so the first term of Trump passed, and they were very happy, and they were very happy with the Biden, who did nothing, as they were very happy with Obama, who was catastrophic for the security of Europe. I mean, everything what has happened in Europe afterwards, from Crimea to Ukraine, all is related to the 2 terms of Obama, which were absolutely a catastrophe. But then, as Trump comes, they dislike profoundly Trump. They don't work with him, and so on. And now suddenly they have him back, and that was a nightmare for the European Union. But they showed, all of them had made campaign against all of them had been intervening in the United States against Trump and in favor of Kamala Harris, who would have been a catastrophe for the world. And they lost, and suddenly they are there with the shambles of a policy which was blind, and which was guided by wishful thinking. And they were in their own kind of balloon inside, not seeing what was happening really in the United States and what is happening also in Europe now. And now they are afraid. They are afraid about the correlation of forces here in Europe, because all our parties, that means the national patriotic conservative parties, we are growing everywhere. And the two mainstream parties, Socialists and People's Party, which is more or less doing a socialist policy as well when they come to power, they are both losing. They thought they would stay forever in this majority, in this parliament, having 80% of the parliament, and then you live very easily. You change a little bit once, which you change a little bit once. You have a commissar from the EPP, and once from S&D, and so on, and you have Renew, which is the same, and you have the Greens, which are a little bit more radical, but you take them in, and you take this disastrous ideas from the Greens so that they are happy on some, and suddenly you have a Europe which declines, which is every time poorer, every time less free, where people are profoundly dissatisfied, where the youth has no way out, where security is crumbling and collapsing in many countries, among others in mine country, with open borders, which is bringing insecurity to every corner. The women have to change their way of life in the little towns in the south of Spain or in Germany or in Austria and so on. I mean, and they have no kind of ideas of changing this, but to say, well, we are so self-satisfied. If you see the whole propaganda that they do is only propaganda for protecting themselves against the challenge of the parties which are coming. And we are growing, they are diminishing, but now they use the European Union and everything, the Commission and the whole bureaucratic apparatus of the European Union is used only to protect themselves from the new forces that are coming as an alternative. And that is what we have. We have a democratic shield. We have this act, Digital Services Act, and so on. They are all administrative and technical mechanism to try to stop the alternative of real conservative policy in Europe, and they don't manage they don't succeed, and they're increasingly nervous. And as you see, the German government, the socialist government failed. There were elections. You had an enormous majority that voted for the right, for AfD and CDU, but the CDU went with the socialists and are doing exactly the same policy as the socialists were doing the 3 years before, which was a complete failure, and which was a catastrophe for the industry and for the energy and for everything in Germany. Europe is really in a profound crisis because these people don't want to change, because they want to stick to power and they want to stick to these ideologies that they have put themselves as identity for themselves, and they are losing the people, but they don't care. They think they can use the money of the people to protect themselves from the people.
Since the Middle East is not the only test for Europe right now, we are
Ukraine.
Exactly. We have just entered the 4th year of Russia's war against Ukraine. How do you assess Europe's capacity to manage its support for Ukraine's defense without being overwhelmed or distracted by this overlapping crisis?
Yeah, we have. Europe made everything for Russia to do what they did. First of all, in 2008, they didn't want to bring into NATO this Ukraine, no others. No. Then Crimea was annexed, and Mrs. Merkel had no complaints to do. She was drinking tea with Putin, I don't know how many weeks later. So business as usual, and we get Nord Stream. Nord Stream, Moscow, Berlin, Moscow, the same as always. We know it from history. When something goes Berlin, Moscow, without the others, it's wrong. And it's always wrong. And Nord Stream was a catastrophe. And Mr. Trump, in his first term, said it to the Germans in the United Nations Assembly. And he warned the Germans, and the Germans laughed. You have the pictures of the Germans laughing in the Assembly of the United Nations when he speaks about, you are going to be in the hands of the Russians. Well, that happened. The Russians thought it was a moment where it was ripe. They got first Crimea, and then they wanted to go into Ukraine. Well, the Putin regime is a criminal regime. It's an oligarchic regime where one big boss, the big criminal who controls more, has the power to move the strings in the interest of the group, of the big group of oligarchs who work there. It's as I say, a profoundly criminal regime. But we have been giving them so many chances to go to this aggression. And we have to react now, and we have to look to prevent it, and we can't do it asking the Americans to do all these things as they have been doing. I mean, they have been all saying that we have marvelous services in Europe. The Americans have nothing, but the budget for the NATO is 75% by the United States. Or I don't know now the exact figure, but that can't be possible. So I think we have to arm ourselves, but the national armies, no European army which is in the hands of a von der Leyen, who then takes the European army to control countries where there are policies that she doesn't like. I mean, the interference now from the Commission against countries which have a different policy and don't like this socialist permanent interference in the private life and this cutting of freedoms and of freedom of speech here, and this impoverishing and this ideology, climate ideology and gender ideology and all these things. I mean, people are fed up of these things. No, but here it seems that it has to be the order. It has to be imposed, and the Commission is working as a government. The Commission was never designed to be a government, and they behave like a government. They punish Hungary. They threaten Italy. They do things which they are not allowed to do. So, and they try to impose ideology to the nations in the European Union. That is more Soviet than a European Union in the traditional of what we thought the European Union should be and would be, and what the founding fathers wanted. They didn't want the bureaucrats in Brussels, unelected people there, deciding what you get to be taught in the schools in Budapest or in Madrid or in Paris or in Finland, in Helsinki, So we have to get back to the sovereignty of and subsidiarity. Subsidiarity is the key word of the spirit of the European Union. We are becoming every day more regulated, more constricted by directives, by an absolute jungle of over-regulation. It's becoming a socialist state with absolute control. That wasn't the journey we were looking for.
I have one last question for you. As vice president of your group, what changes are you seeing in the way the parliament works at the moment? And How are these shifting alliances affecting its ability to act with one clear voice?
Well, I think, as I told you, the majority that now exists and that has been ruling the European Union the whole existence till now, they are in panic and they are looking for ways of stopping us. No, it's difficult for them because the mood of the different peoples in Europe are really with us. They are trying to obstruct us directly. They are in total agreement. People's Party, Social S&D, and Renew, and the Greens, they are always absolutely in full agreement for blocking us and for using very irregular ways and means to obstruct us of having the same rights as them. And we don't have them, actually. We don't have them now. We are marginalized, and we have not our posts that we should have because of the right of our voters. We should have our presidencies in the commissions and so on. We don't get them because the others make a kind of cordon sanitaire, call it as you like, Brandmauer in German. But the thing is, they try to block us in a very unfair, unjust, politically way. But people are speaking on every election in Europe, in every corner of Europe. When we have an election, we are growing and they are falling.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us today. Thank you everyone for watching us from home. If you like this episode of A View from Brussels, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time.